Welcome to Looking at Lucasfilm, the podcast with a different perspective on the world of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all of the other entities that George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and Kevin Feige, or so they say, and the rest of the team at Lucasfilm have been dreaming up over the past 40 years. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host Brian Gaughan and I are recording on Wednesday night, September 20th, and Brian and I are recording just before midnight Los Angeles time, which is when the first 3 episodes of Star Wars Andor drops.
I'm not getting any sleep tonight, am I?
No, you're not. But I think you're actually looking forward to this. You were just reading all of the rapturous reviews for...
Yeah, everything from Variety to the New York Times to Deadline, everybody is giving it like rave reviews, but they're really focusing on the part that it's different than anything Disney's ever done, especially for Disney Plus.
I keep hearing moving Star Wars in a more adult direction, which seems somewhat controversial. But anyway, we're going to talk about those episodes after we viewed those episodes. But now in the first half of the show, the news portion, Brian and I are going to talk about what we saw at the D23 Expo last week. And it's going to be kind of a split thing in that I lucked into, and I want to stress this, by sheer dumb luck, got into the Star Wars Lucasfilm presentation. Brian, because he is a kind, honorable person, did not get in.
I tried to get in, but I did try to get in the right way, and I stood outside the door, and I was just hoping there'd be one more chair for them to let us in. But they didn't. I guess it was pretty full. People really wanted to see what was going on, and especially, I think, Marvel more so than Lucasfilm.
I agree. But what was kind of interesting is the way they structured the studio showcase. Is they started off with Lucasfilm, and then they went to Marvel, and then the last portion of it was James Cameron basically being beamed in from New Zealand, where I guess they're finishing up shooting on Avatar, 3 or 4. The thing. I just saw that they put the release date for 4 or 5 out for 2027. But anyway, we're going to talk about everything that we saw at the show during the news portion. And as always, the news portion of Looking at Lucasfilm is brought to you by Storybook Destinations, trusted travel partner of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. For a worry-free travel experience every time, please book online at StorybookDestinations.com. So, Brian, why don't we pick up? I mean, we did get to do a lot of stuff. We got to hang a lot at the show. We got to see a lot of stuff, wander to the floor. And one of the places we got into was the actual Lucasfilm pavilion.
Yeah, it was a setup with basically focusing on 3 movies, and that was Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and Willow.
Yep.
And with the Star Wars, it just had basically the costumes from the TV shows and the movies. But with Indiana Jones, they had, of course, Indy's costume, but they also had Phoebe Waller-Bridger?
There we go.
Okay. It had her costume, and then it had 2 big concept art paintings. And you and I went at it like the Zapruder film, and we were focusing on and seeing what, and the one painting showed... It was a giant hotel, and there was a lot of French signings, but there were also people dressed in like Moroccan type of clothes. So it could have been like a Casablanca, and the name of the hotel was the Atlantic in French, L'Atlantique. And then, and the other painting was a temple scene, and it had like Greek type statues, and then the bottom looked like it was really waterlogged. So you and I came up with something that maybe this is about, maybe the city of Atlantis.
Again, we pulled this info off of the costumes that were on display. And we were having some discussion during pre-gaming tonight whether or not The stuff that was hanging on the walls were production design or concept paintings. I think you pretty much nailed it, Brian, in stating that these were the kind of images you used to sell the film.
Yeah.
Convincing the folks at Disney, it's like, you're going to need to open the wall a little further. Again, I was in the room when they ran. I'm not going to say it's the Indiana Jones 5 trailer, but it was a set of clips that clearly set up the film, that gave you a sense of the world. And it starts with this off-screen voice about, I miss the days when I would get up, it's like, where is adventure going to take us next? And the thing is, the camera eventually pulls back, and it's Sala. It's John Rhys Davies again.
Cool.
But you then get to see an older Indiana Jones who says, those days are over, my friend. And they establish that, this is an older Indiana Jones. He's living in New York City. He's deep in the stacks at some university, and it looks like his adventuring days are behind him. And then suddenly they're not. And this is set in 1969 because they show the ticker tape parade for Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and James Lovell coming back from the moon. But again, in the middle of this ticker tape parade, you see Indiana Jones, who's commandeered a policeman's horse. And at one point, you see him down in the New York subway system riding on that horse. What they seem to set up is that the Phoebe Bridger character, who we don't have a name of yet, is Indy's goddaughter.
Well, we do have a name for her, Helena.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Helena. And that evidently that's what sets this story in motion, that Indy gets sucked back into this world to help save whatever his goddaughter has got involved in. And we get to see him racing across the rooftop of a moving train, and there's races through the streets of what looks like Mumbai in small vehicles. And when they finished showing the film clip, Harrison Ford and Phoebe Bridger came out on stage, and James Mangold had just been there, the director, and talking about how, he actually named the cinema in upstate New York that he went to, and saw Indiana Jones and the original Raiders, and that's what convinced him, I have to make movies. And Ford, who you think is an old hand at this sort of thing, came out on stage, and 7,500 people stood up and cheered. And he really got emotional. He really teared up. And he seemed very proud of this movie. It's like, we made a good one, but this is the last one. He literally told the audience, I am not falling down for you people again.
Now, I wasn't there, but I did get to, thank goodness for people with cameras and telephones, and I did get to see. And when that happened, I mean, I was really emotional. But also watching Phoebe Waller-Bridge and the way she held herself and the way she came on there, and she just looked like the perfect replacement or
well, now remember,
not replacement, but what do they say to the crown? The next person up.
There we go. It's interesting you say that, because remember, at the ending of The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I actually loved that little moment in the wedding of Indy and Marion, where the door of the church blows open and Indy's hat blows down the aisle, and Mutt almost picks it up.
Gets it up, yeah.
But his dad picks it up. It's like, not yet, kid. So, we've had that almost handoff before, and Phoebe would be a very interesting way to go. But
yeah,
I'm not willing to make that bet just yet. We're going to have to wait till to June of 2023.
It's like what they call blue sky.
There we go. But right after they finish up the presentation, and Harrison and Phoebe go off stage with James Mangold and likewise Kathleen Kennedy, and Kevin Feige, Michael Giacchino, who the gentleman who's directing the Werewolf by Night holiday special, come out on stage, and they clearly are overwhelmed themselves. It's like huge indie fans, and more to the point, how do we top that? But they plowed right in. But I'm sorry, we served dessert first. We should probably get back up to the top here and talk about what Kathleen talked about at the event. And I guess she came out on stage wearing a fairly cool Darth Vader stormtrooper.
Well, she was very casual, more so than I think that she was at the Star Wars convention, but she came out very casual, and it was a very cool shirt. It was like a kind of T-shirt, but it had a Darth Vader helmet and a Stormtrooper helmet, and it was repeated. And then she had white slacks on, and she looked really good. And the first thing she introduced was Andor, and whoa, is there anybody more enthusiastic than Diego Luna? I think he is the happiest person in the world that he's back in the Star Wars universe.
And he's not just back as a performer in the Star Wars universe, he's also an executive producer, and was already talking about, and we're about to go back to work on this second season of the show. And clearly proud. They showed some very strong clips, which hopefully we'll get to see in context later tonight. And you were mentioning, I want to say, Genevieve O'Reilly was there, or
the one who plays Mon Martha, Kylie Solar, she was there, and Adria Arjona, she plays Bix. It was funny because Kathleen actually introduced her as Bix. She said Bix, and then she came, and the cast looks great, and it just, like the reviews have been coming out, it's just they're saying that it's something Disney's never done before. So I'm really looking forward to the 3 hours tonight.
There we go.
And see what's going on. I mean, I don't know. Every Star Wars series so far, I've been blown away by. I mean, yes, Boba Fett got off to a slow start, but then it turned into a Western, and a Toshio Mifune Western, and how can you not love that?
I think Boba Fett ended in a good place, and I would be intrigued to pick up with that character at some point in the future. And speaking of picking up with a character, Willow.
Yeah.
The Disney Plus series, which, by the way, starts on November 30th of this year. Kathleen brought out the full cast there. I was not aware that Joanna Wally was going to be coming back.
Yeah, well, she was at the other thing I saw at Lucasfilm at Star Wars. She came out there, but of course the whole thing was, well, is Val Kilmer ever going to play any kind of role? But we kind of know the answer to that now.
Yeah,
because Warwick said, well, we know that he's not going to be there, and he named his character. I can't think of his character, but we have his best friend, and out came Christian Slater,
who I have to say clearly seemed tickled to be invited to be part of this. Seems to have jumped into the production fairly late.
That's what it sounded like. Yeah, like they were already filming for a long time, and then he came in like near the end or anything. So maybe they were hoping they would get. I don't know. I'm not going to conject or anything. I'm just glad that Christian's there because, as you know, I got to hang out with him a lot when I worked on Gleaming the Cube, and he is really one of the greatest, really neatest people I've ever had spend any kind of time with. And you could see it when he came on. He was just in a good mood. He laughed. And it looks like he's going to add that swashbuckler. I think he's going to add the comic relief too.
Well, here's hoping. But at the same time, I think he seemed happy that the rest of the cast had spent months in the cold and the wet of Wales, and I came in for 3 weeks and I go with them. All right, so that comes November 30th. Then we got information about the Bad Batch, and wasn't it originally supposed to be that we were going to get Star Wars Andor, and then like 3 weeks later,
we were going to start. Bad Batch was supposed to be out like at the end of September. I think the 31st of September, and then they pushed it back, but they didn't give a date. But they did give a date. Filoni said it would be out January 4th, 2023. But you know what's funny about that? He said it in such a way, I don't think anybody got it, because I've been reading reports about D23, and everybody's saying, well, they haven't announced when Bad Batch is coming out. But I heard him say it. Matter of fact, a few times, because I rewinded it.
Okay.
But yeah, and then of course he talked about Tales of the Jedi.
Based on the material that was shared on stage. Really looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
Dave Filoni has this gift for finding little filigrees and corners of the Star Wars story that you wouldn't think that, okay, there's a great story there, and just teases these things out. And we get early Ahsoka, right?
Yeah, these are basically origin stories of both Ahsoka. There's going to be 3 about Ahsoka and 3 about Dooku. But in the Dooku one is Quinjon seems to be a big part of that.
I saw that. Isn't a Qui-Gon supposed to be Dooku's Padawan?
Yes.
Is that what they're suggesting?
I think that's what we're gonna get, that backstory, and you know that it's gonna go on to a second season, and and if it turns out to be backstories to a lot of people, did you see the one quick shot of there was a Yoda-looking creature or a person with hair? Did you see that?
I did.
Is that Yoda with this like stylish hairstyle? Or
I do not know what to tell you. And frankly, given how many years it's been since I had hair, I get
yeah.
All right. But again, drops.
He seemed very happy talking about it, and then he talks about Ahsoka, and you could just see. I mean, here's Dave Filoni got brought into George's world, and he became George's Padawan, and he is now a full-fledged Jedi, and he even brought Favreau into this whole thing, and he's really the spirit animal of George Lucas. I mean, he is the one who is holding the torch and giving people Lucas's vision, it seems like.
Now, we're talking about the live action Ahsoka.
Yeah, the live action Ahsoka. Okay. And they announced casting for who was going to play Ezra Bridger.
And that's new. In fact, they didn't do that on stage. That was just
no.
Weekend.
That I just got. That just came out last week. The Eamon Esfandi, who was in King Richard, the Will Smith film, he was just announced to play Ezra. So at least we know that Ezra's going to be in it. But if Ezra's in it, then Thrawn has got to be in it. And I don't think they've announced who Thrawn is going to be. I'm just hoping that Lars Mikkelsen, who was the voice, gets to play him.
Well, we'll see. I mean, but again, we don't have... All we know on live action Ahsoka is 2023. Then we had Mr. Favreau, Jon Favreau, come on stage and introduces John Watts, the director of the most recent Spider-Man trilogies. And we get our backstory on where Skeleton Crew came from. That John had this fully formed idea for a Star Wars limited series. And
when Favreau was working with Watts on the Spider-Man movies, he played Happy, and he was talking to him, and he goes, listen, we're doing this, and this was even before it came out, but he goes, listen, we're doing this thing on Star Wars, it's going to be on Disney as streaming, and would you like to come and do and work with us and do one of the episodes or some episodes? And he goes, oh, no. He goes, I already have something set up. I have a whole Star Wars story set up. And he started telling him about it. And, of course, that story is Skeleton Crew. And Watts came out, and he came out with Chris Ford, who is the co-writer. And they basically said, it's about a group of kids that gets lost in the Star Wars galaxy. And then they brought on Jude Law, but they didn't They didn't say anything else. They didn't say who the kids were, but they said they were filming. That that a matter of fact that they were filming that day, and they got off set to come there, and now they had to leave to go continue to work on it. But I did a little bit of deep diving, and somewhere I read, and I don't know if this is true or not, but they said that the kids are younglings. Now, if they're younglings, this is after Return of the Jedi. So were they going around trying to find The force sensitive people, were they trying to get them? And are these kids that are force sensitive, and now you've got the remnants of the Empire trying to get them? Or
Well, again, all I can tell you is
I know.
they shared one piece of concept art, and it showed a rather nervous Jude Law, whatever character he's playing. And you remember when C-3PO went up to Jabba's palace and that eyeball on a stick security thing came out and looked at him? Wherever Jude is in the shot, he has 3 of those things on him. So it's some sort of high security situation, and he's clearly not happy to be in it. So I guess we're going to have to wait to find out where that image plays into the storyline. Beyond that, of course, we also had news on season 3 of The Mandalorian and brought out the whole cast. Everyone was clearly excited to be back. But I think the highlight of that part of the Lucasfilm panel was Amy Sedaris, who talked about how you're on a set and you're trying to do the lines, but it's like you're gesturing to props that aren't there, to characters that aren't there. And when you deviate from the script, they go, no, you can't say that. There were no grandpas in the Star Wars universe. And
in space.
In space, and it's just sort of like...
Well, and she just has a way to say it, too. She and her brother, David Sedaris, are 2 of the greatest monologuists alive. And they know how to tell a story. They can tell a dramatic story and have you laughing and crying at the same time. And that's the way she is. And she got up there and she just said that, I don't know what I'm doing. I have a mullet. I can't see because I can't have my contacts in because the sand keeps on going in my face. They tell me that I'm funny. The only reason I'm funny is because I read the lines. Why do I read the lines? Because I don't know what's going on. I don't know whatever there was going. I just say what, and even if I try to improv, they keep on telling me, no, Amy, there's nothing like that in space. Yeah. So she was just so good. And you could see everybody else, including Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni had his hand in his face because they couldn't stop laughing. And it was so wonderful to see the other actors. They really, and even who's the one that plays the other Mandalorian? Katie Sokoloff. You could really see, she said, I can't wait till we have some scenes together, or I'm glad that we have some scenes together. And just watching her and Amy Sedaris Emily Swallow, and how much they looked like a great, and then of course, Giancarlo gets up there and he says one of the most amazing, speeches about what life is and what Star Wars is. And it was just remarkable. And I would love to be a fly on the wall on this thing.
February, right? Is that what we're hearing for 2023 when we're finally going to get our Mandalorian season 3?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it is supposed to be in the early the first quarter 2023.
Okay. So we talked about everything that was talked about on stage as part of the D23 studio showcase. Now let's talk about what wasn't talked about, and particularly Patty Jenkins' Star Wars Rogue Squadron film, which we had been hearing whispers about issues with that, right? I mean, some of it was scheduling. I think Ms. Jenkins' plate is awfully full at the moment.
Yeah, last November 2021, she basically announced that because she was doing Wonder Woman 2 or 3 and also Cleopatra with Gal Gadot, that she was going to step away. And that's what she said. She was stepping away from Rogue Squadron. And then we didn't hear anything about it, but it was still on the schedule for, what was it for? It was for 2024, right?
I want to say 2023.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
But it was still on the schedule until last week when it was very quietly removed from the schedule.
Yeah, and what's weird is as recently as December of 2020, as part of the Disney Investor Day thing, Kathleen Kennedy announced with great excitement that they'd not only gotten Patty Jenkins to commit to doing a Star Wars film, they'd also gotten Taika Waititi, which, jumping back to June of this year, Taika Waititi talking about this movie. He's talked about him trying to write a Star Wars idea at the moment. I see how it goes because once I submit it, then, well, that determines when it gets made or even if it gets made. And I think you were just pointing out that supposedly in August of this year, that project entered development hell.
Yeah.
And about the same time, we began hearing the same things about Rogue Squadron.
Well, if this happens, then we don't get a film, a Star Wars motion picture. When was the last one?
We kind of got two right on top of one another. We got May of 2018, we got Solo, a Star Wars story, and then December of 2019, we got Rise of Skywalker.
So almost 3 years since there's been a Star Wars film. Now, when George was doing them, he was releasing them every 3 years. But when Disney was doing them, they were releasing them every 2 years, then every year with Rogue One and Solo. But now we haven't had anything.
Yeah, but the first season of The Mandalorian debuts November 2019. And with the huge, overwhelming success of that, not to mention what an amazing retail line Grogu became.
Right.
This whole new avenue opened up for Lucasfilm. And it's worth noting at the very same Investors Day that Rogue Squadron and the Taika Waititi project were announced. Kathleen also revealed that they had 10 Star Wars series in the works for Disney+. And we started off the show today talking about the amazing reviews that Star Wars Andor has just gotten, and now everybody's just raving about this. So if this is the path forward for Star Wars, that they do these limited series for Disney, and it's still the huge success that it always was from a pop culture point of view, is this necessarily a bad thing?
Well, no. I mean, because remember when Lucas was done with the movies, then that's when he started doing the Clone Wars. And that's when Dave Filoni started doing his cartoons and the books. The books were coming out. So there was something that was filling that up. And I love going to a theater and I love being, attacked by the Star Wars everything. But there is so much joy in watching these TV shows and also hearing about the making of them. I don't think there's been anyone that we didn't hear about that everybody is like going, this is the greatest experience I've ever had. This is the greatest cast I've ever worked with. I've never had more fun. And it's just so nice to hear things like that. Because when you heard about poor George and making his films, there's not a lot of happy times. I mean, he had a lot of adversary when he was working on him, but he knew what he wanted, and I think he did the right thing. But this is a good way to take what George brought us and bring it to a next level. Not a better level, not a higher level, but the next level.
When Disney was building and developing Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, there's a story about how initially they were supposed to, the Imagineers spent a year designing Tatooine, Mos Eisley. And you're going to get to go to the cantina and so on and so forth. And they bring it to Bob Iger. And what Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy have decided at that point is like, the future of Star Wars isn't in exploiting its past. The future of Star Wars is in taking us to new places. And so that's when they came up with the idea of Batuu and Black Spire Outpost and so on and so forth. But they also decided that they would tie Black Spire Outpost to the storyline of the new trilogy, Rey and the like.
That wasn't a bad idea, but that's only if you kept on going with it. But see, the TV shows took a step back.
If you look at the TV shows, it's the Jon Favreaus, it's the Dave Filonis who are driving the bus. And these are guys who love the old Star Wars, that sort of thing. So, of course, Dave specializes in doing things like Star Wars Rebels. We're finding that, there really is some exciting story between the end of the Revenge of the Sith and New Hope. There's a really good story in there. We can find it. And so, to me, what's fascinating is the other announcement that came out of the D23 Expo, which is that starting in November, The Mandalorian and Grogu will be appearing in the Disneyland version of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Now, will they be hanging out with Boba Fett and Fennec Shan?
What they're going to do is Boba Fett and Fennec Shan will be in one end of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, while Grogu and the Mandalorian will be in another end, because so you can then get two separate queues.
Okay.
You can then, add double the fun, so to speak. There is no plan yet for these characters to show up at the Walt Disney World version of a Galaxy's Edge. And my understanding is that may be tied to Star Wars, the Galactic Star Cruiser.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
But we'll dig down into that and see what we can.
I heard it's because when the people on the Galactic Star Cruiser, they go to Baku and then they have to do some quests.
Yeah.
And if Grogu was there, it may mess up the quest.
Well, my understanding is they have like 3 hours, 4 hours of planet side to do their quests. And if they're spending two hours of that standing in line to get their picture taken with Grogu, that cuts into stuff that impacts what they can do back on the ship. But anyway.
Well, it was the D23 was great, and I think they announced a lot of cool stuff. I think they announced more stuff at D23 than they did at Star Wars Celebration.
That reminds me, because, of course, our good friend Dan Zayer was at Star Wars Celebration, as were you, and you two got to meet up there. And I got to see Dan again at the show. In fact, I want to say we hung out at the Star Wars. We went in together to the parks panel. Yeah,
we were in line for a good about 45 minutes, and I got to meet Dan again. I got to meet Drew. That was really cool for me. It was really weird for me because I was fanboying and I was trying to keep it in because all these guys were there. And
now this brings me to my special request. Dan, just this past year, published a brand new book, I Am Your Father, and has sold ridiculously well in the States, and we're all very proud for Dan. But it turns out that you can hear from the last name Zayer, Dan has Germanic roots. And Dan would love to have, for his book collection at home, a copy of the German edition of I Am Your Father. So I'm kind of hoping that there's a listener out there, because I guess Dan's tried to get it through Amazon, and it has been unsuccessful. So I'm wondering if we have a very kind Looking at Lucasfilm listener who's headed to Europe, particularly Germany, anytime soon, who might bop into a bookstore and pick up a copy of I Am Your Father there. And if you can get it to me, I will get it to Dan. And then we will have one happy author, because he can then, hold yet another edition of his book. By the way, Dan is also working on another project, which he wasn't at liberty to tell me about, but we will look forward to that as well. And speaking of looking forward, folks, okay, we're going to stop here and pick up in a couple of hours after Brian and I have both managed to see all of the episodes of Star Wars Andor's that debut in just a few hours.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
speaking into the void?
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Both Brian and I have now seen the first 3 episodes that are available right now on Disney Plus for Star Wars Andor. But before we get to that, Brian, you had some news about Star Wars Acolyte.
Yeah, something that I'm very surprised they didn't announce at D23 because it was so far advanced. They have casting and everything. Mm-hmm. It's the Acolyte. And they just announced a new person, Charlie Bartlett, who is actually in Russian Doll, which was created by Leslie Headland, and then she's doing this. And he will be joining, of course, Amanda Stenberg. She was Rue from the Hunger Games. Lee Jong-jae from Squid Games, which I think is brilliant casting, and I'm glad to see him do something else. Jodie Turner-Smith. She was in Queen and Slim, an independent film from A24. And Mandy Jacinto, he was in The Good Place. And this sounds like a great cast. And I don't know much about it, but I heard it's going to be like a mystery thriller that takes place in the final days of the High Republic.
Okay.
So it looks like it's something that, well, it's 100% in my wheelhouse, but I think it will be in the Star Wars wheelhouse too, which, now that we're going to talk about Andor, is creating a new wheelhouse for Star Wars.
There was a lot of talk leading up to the debut of Star Wars Andor about how adult it would be. And what was kind of intriguing for these first 3 episodes is we're very much in George Lucas's used future, where we seem to be a distance away from the Force, which also kind of intriguing because I think we were on the first half of today's show, we were talking about Taika Waititi's Star Wars movie that he wanted to make. And he wanted to make something that was not part of the Skywalker saga. So maybe would involve the Force, maybe would not. But I really enjoyed this.
Well, when you say adult, basically it's really heavy in drama. There's not a lot of humor in it, which if you look at all the Star Wars, there are humor, to bring up the drama. But this was heavy drama. And it was described, when it says what it is, it was described as a science fiction, spy espionage, action adventure.
Okay. I could get from the setup that's where they're headed, and certainly understanding that by the end of season 2, this is supposed to click right into place with Rogue One, a Star Wars story. What was interesting here is it was kind of a lovely mix of establishing the world, the characters, and giving you just enough of the backstory on Cassian, or Cassa. In fact, I think the backstory of why he might be that much more compelled to throw in with a bunch of folks who are about to take on the Empire from what we saw happen to his own home planet. In fact, didn't they refer to it over the course of the show as there'd been a mining disaster?
Yeah, they said once an Imperial mining planet that there was an industrial accident and everybody were killed, except we know for this little tribe of like Lord of the Flies type kids that seem to, actually not Lord of the Flies, they seem to be very stable and they know their place. And I mean, I would love to have seen more of that, only because it was very interesting.
Kind of a mix between getting Cassian's backstory, and obviously those two threads will come together, given that when we first met Cassian, he was looking for his sister, or so he said. Even then, wasn't entirely sure that's who he was going to find in that bar. He was actually asking the hostess, did she use her name? And it's, nobody uses their real names here.
Oh, see, I didn't see that. I thought he was really just, he heard, maybe she was there. and maybe she was alive. So, but of course, we'll know more about that quest.
Kathleen Kennedy from the stage at the D23 Expo said that these first 3 episodes, first of all, it was, I want to say, an hour and 40 minutes worth of material.
Well, actually, if you take off the credits, it's an hour and it's 103 minutes, because they were all between 35 minutes and 38 minutes long. I timed them because I wanted to see exactly what kind of feature it was, and it was it was one that would play well in the theater, and it was the first arc, I guess, of what we're gonna get. And it introduced some amazing characters, which I hope we'll see more of. And I mean, we've got the bad guy, we've got the love interest. I mean, we have all the tropes coming up.
It's interesting you mentioned the bad guy, Kyle Soler, I want to say, as Cyril Karn, the deputy inspector of Primor Authority. This is not the First Order. This is not the Empire. This is
not Imperial. This is a corporation.
Yeah, and in fact, it was interesting when they went planet side to try to capture Cassian. The folks on the planet, haven't seen the Blues in a while, so they were well known. But yeah, I mean, fairly early on, Cyril had been warned off by his boss, the actual inspector at Primor Authority, to the effect that this was an accident, and basically told him as he headed off to a conference, when I come back, I want to see the accident report. And they were doing something not too heroic, but just to make this go away. And he buried the needle in the opposite direction.
He wanted it to be a murder, and the inspector said it was they were killed in a fight, and they were probably the cause of it. Because he knew the one guy who was involved in it. So he knew that it was probably them harassing somebody, and they picked on the wrong person.
So we have, and he's been dealt quite a setback given what happened planetside. And a lot of that was at the hand of Stellan Skarsgård's character, Luthen Rail?
Luthen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily know a whole lot about him at this point, but he seems quite capable, and he seems to know a lot more about Cassian than certainly Cassian knows about him. That this is somebody that maybe they've had their eye on because of his skill set. And when this ended, they did a lovely sort of toggle back and forth from Casa being rescued. Is rescued the right word? What Marva did, she sort of decided he needed rescuing.
Almost adopted to the point of so he would not get captured or killed.
Yep.
And by Marva Andor, and that's where Andor comes in. She kind of like brings him into the family.
And so we get a sense of how he came to this world, how Marva took him off of the planet where the mining disaster had happened. But at the same time, I think our MacGuffin here is Cassian looking for his sister. And I wonder if that thread is going to play out.
Well, that is one of the MacGuffins, and I think that's what's going to go through. But it has to have a ending, of course, because Rogue One, she is not part of it. Neither is Bix. But also the MacGuffin was the NS9 Starpath unit, because that got Luthen and Cassius together to and then they didn't. Well, I'm not going to say anything, but yeah.
What became fairly apparent is Luthen thought the valuable thing was Cassian. More to the effect of, somebody with his set of skills, somebody who knew how to walk into an Imperial base and basically be invisible and walk out with this sort of component without getting caught. That's a man with a set of skills. Particularly if you're planning a rebellion, you want to have in your corner. And that's, I guess, what's intriguing about Star Wars Andor, is that these 3 episodes sort of laid out the chessboard and introduced us to a number of the pieces on the board. and, gave us a sense of early relationships, how the sorts of histories that certain people had. At the same time, we saw the stakes. James McArdle's character, Tim Carlo, paid a price.
No good deed goes unpunished.
There we go.
But listening to you talk, something just came to me.
Mm-hmm.
What if Luthen knows about Cassian because of his sister? What if he says, I know a lot about you. What if somehow the sister is going to play into this? I mean, it just came to me. I don't know if that's right or anything, but like you said, the MacGuffin is the sister. She's kind of important in this. But what if she's already part of this group that Luthen has put together?
I would not be surprised. I mean, I think one of the things I have enjoyed about the Star Wars projects to date is the folks there are very much into classic story construction. You face it, we have not been spent 3 episodes sharing information about Akasa's sister and his quest for her to have that thread just play off into nothing. That this is going to factor in. But again, remember, we are 3 episodes into what will eventually be a story told in 24 episodes. So we're just an eighth of the way around the track here. And it's especially going to be interesting to see how the back 9, so to speak, of season 1 play out here. But got to also say that one of the things that genuinely impressed me about this set of shows is I had heard going in that Tony Gilroy, the writer, creator of this thing, was very much into the more physical effects, the real sets and that sort of thing. And I want to say this, one of the things that really stood out about this is the grittier used future. This is clearly a planet where, people work hard and just to scrape by.
But what they work on are basically they're putting together, or they're taking apart where starships go to die and to be stripped. And that was kind of what Rey was doing. She was a scavenger, but this is like a planet all of scavengers, it seems.
It's an intriguing world, though, given that we just saw Luthen and Cassian effectively headed off of that planet. But at the same time, we've left Bix behind, and she's suffered a loss. I can't help but think we're going to circle back to her part of the story. Oh, like I said, this is...
Well, she does know Luthen, so maybe they do go back to her.
Could be. But again, what I loved was after the Blues had gone to Marva's house to look for Cassian and trashed the house and left the 2 soldiers there, and they began to hear the sound of the rhythmic pounding going through the community, and her, you hear that? That's what the start of a rebellion sounds like.
Yeah.
Just, again, it was a lovely bit of dialogue by Fiona Shaw, who, if you're a Harry Potter fan, you've known her for years as Mrs. Dursley, but loved seeing her here in a more sympathetic part, and look forward to seeing what else she'll do with the show.
Well, I also love the line, which you knew it was coming, where she would say, yeah, but wait till they stop.
Yeah.
Because isn't that from the old Tarzan movies? Don't worry about the drums, just wait till they stop.
I think I do recall hearing that from at least one of the Johnny Weissmuller movies.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, again, like I said, 3 episodes in, good start. We have another 9 to go for season 1, and season 2 is supposed to begin production fairly soon. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this story plays out. It already feels like a worthy companion to Rogue One, which I would argue is probably the best of the bunch of the,
And another thing, one more thing before we wrap it up is, well, first of all, there's no lightsabers, there's no Jedi, there's no stormtroopers. All there is spaceships and blasters, and it gives you the feel of the start of this whole thing.
And at the same time, I think one of the things I enjoyed was that so often in Star Wars movies, people randomly fire blasters and Star Troopers fall down or Stormtroopers fall down and that sort of thing. Well, it was kind of interesting when one of the Blues shot at Tim and took him out. You actually got to because he wasn't wearing a Stormtrooper helmet, you got to see the face of his superior and his face and realizing, oh, I screwed up. And the superior immediately, give me a rifle, get out of here, go to the ship. And I guess that's the other difference between the Blues and the Stormtroopers is the Blues is like, oh, God, this is going to be paperwork. Anyway, all right. So that brings us to the end of this weirdly constructed episode of Looking at Lucasfilm. I hope you folks enjoyed it. Brian and I will be back in 2 weeks' time to pick up and, chat about where the next 2 episodes of Star Wars Andor took us. Likewise, share whatever other news is coming out of Lucasfilm. But in the meantime, Brian, where can folks find you online?
On Twitter, I'm Geek with Children, and Children is spelled ChildRN. And that's where you can find me. I don't write a lot, but if you need me, I'm there.
Cool. Okay. As far as you can find us on Twitter and Instagram is Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook is Jim Hill Media News. Also, if you're looking for other stuff to listen to, we, of course, have Disney Dish that I do with Len Testa. We also have our animation news podcast, Fine Tuning, that I do with Drew Taylor. Let's see. We also have Marvelous Disney I do with Aaron Adams. And let's see. Oh, if you could do Brian and I a favor, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review Looking at Lucasfilm, that would be very helpful. Likewise, if you really, really, really like what you heard here, if you want to head to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be cool as well. And I guess that's going to do it for now. Thanks for listening, and Brian and I will be back soon.